You participated in a ritual, a spectacle carefully designed to make you feel like you have control, when in reality, you are just legitimizing a system that has already decided everything before you get to the ballot box. Think about it. If you can only choose between A and B, but someone has already chosen who A and B would be, are you really choosing? The structure of representative democracy ensures that only certain profiles reach power. Not just anyone can build a viable candidacy. And in democracy, the only thing that changes are the faces on stage. The essential policies, those that really affect the distribution of power and wealth, remain untouched. It doesn't matter if you voted for the left-wing or right-wing candidate. Voting is not power. It is the illusion of power. It is the invisible contract you sign saying, I accept this system.
Did you know I was personally dragged into the whistleblowing about the sexual abuse, trafficking of vulnerable women at the non-profit organization with a false accusation by the female central to my story? I had support from some famous people like...
One man told me about being beaten by the police and left permanently disabled because of a woman's false allegation.
After 9 years, you know what I realized? Ignorance is bliss.
Hello, it's December 2025. Now this video is inspired by a topic that everyone can relate to. And this has to do with, for example, when you're communicating with someone, whether it be verbally in person or perhaps even online. And apparently in today's world, most communication between people are done online, whether it be text or video or even just a voice call. And what I really like to focus on is highlighting, making people aware of something very important, because it's going to answer some questions, for example, on why some people become bat-poo crazy when you're simply asking simple questions. Now, what you have to do is ask yourself, setting aside what the topic is, it doesn't matter what the topic is or who you're talking to, you have to understand, are you, for example, communicating, debating perhaps someone's efforts, their goal, their movement, their cause? Or are you communicating, having a discussion about or debate about how they've built their identity around something? And this is very key. And this also explains, for example, how something like cognitive dissonance takes place, why it takes place, where people are not interested about the facts, but feelings. And when you're talking about someone's feelings, about how they've built their identity around something, whether it be real or perceived, you're not going to win, for example, a debate. There's nothing in the world that's going to change it. They have to change themselves. And so when you're having these discussions or debates, and I'm using the word debate loosely, I'm not talking about a formal debate, although I'm sure it can apply. But let's take, for example, a movement or something. Somebody will gravitate towards that for whatever reason, doesn't matter. And they will build their identity around that movement, regardless if it's real or perceived, if it's a good cause or appearing to be a good cause. That's who they are. So if you try to, for example, even challenge them or question them about that, they don't have answers because they're not, for example, participating for the cause. They're participating because that's how they identify. So there's two different things that you're going to be dealing with when you're talking to people. The identity that they built from within, or perhaps even with external influences, or a cause. And we can see this across the board on any group or profession or anything. People build their identity around something. Again, real or perceived, good or bad. Now let's just go through some examples here to kind of bring it closer to home. Let's start off with social justice movements. People will adhere to a specific social justice movement. Again, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. And they become that movement. Their whole identity is that movement. And again, when you try to challenge them on some of the foundations, for example, there's some holes in some logic, perhaps there's no logic, which we see most of the time, they get very upset because you're challenging their identity. They identify as this person who is fighting for this particular cause. You can also take this to the next level when it comes to truther and freedom types, where it's their identity. This is who they are. They identify as a truther, and they're always trying to seek the truth. And I've talked about going down rabbit holes and being misdirected and everything else and being consumed by things. And this consumption comes from them identifying as, for example, a truther. They're seeking the truth, and then they're trying to get the truth out there as much as they can. And I mentioned in some overlays and in a video where before someone seeks truth, for example, to get to the bottom of something, their view on that topic is simple. They have a simple answer, simple conclusion, whatever. But then they start to dig, and all of a sudden everything becomes so complex, and then they just want to share with the whole world what they've learned, all the complexity. But eventually, if they're lucky enough, they will come back to simplicity and realize that complicating the uncomplicated, for example, like philosophy does, was useless. But these people have to go through that, perhaps, on their journey, we'll call it. So people identify as a truther or a freedom fighter. Oh, I went to a protest, and I've said, even long before 2020, protest marches, petitions, and all these things are allowed. It gives people an opportunity to vent, thinking that they're doing something while accomplishing nothing. But this is how they identify. That's why when you, especially with these fake heroes, because this is now their identity is built on this, they get very, as a descriptive, triggered when you ask questions. Because you're challenging their identity. And they don't want to lose that. And for a lot of people, they don't want to have to, as another old school term, reinvent themselves. Now, let's just take it the next step up. Let's talk about professionals or professions. It could be any profession. A nurse, doctor, even these fake doctors that call themselves psychologists and all this stuff. Anyone in the legal profession, law enforcement, police, even politicians, they build their identity around a cause. Their cause becomes their identity. And a lot of ego, especially with these in the hierarchy of society, these higher positions give people a lot of ego. I've discussed this in detail and everything else, and with alpha and betas and everything. But really, what I want to focus on, even with professionals, they build their identity around a profession. They're no longer Bob or Jane. They become the nurse, the doctor, the police officer. They're no longer, or they think they're no longer who they are, but really they are. And professions is just a way to hide behind something. It's a mask. And for some, it's an opportunity for them to exercise, show who they really are, and say, oh, I was just doing my job. But really, they show who they are that way, and then they put the mask on in their private life, their personal life. Not always, sometimes it's the other way around, but whatever. The point is, regardless of what the cause is, people will build their identity around that cause. And again, the cause becomes their identity. And that's what they're fighting for. So when you try to explain to someone, for example, about a cause that they're trying to promote, and you just can't get through, and you're dealing with logical fallacies to the extreme, they're not addressing anything, there's no logic or common sense, and they get very upset, the more you just ask questions. Because their cause is their identity, not the cause itself. They hide behind the cause, but that's not what it's all about. So how does this help you when you're talking with someone? Well, one, you can save yourself a lot of time, so you're not wasting time by talking to individuals about things that really it's about their identity. Because you're not going to get anywhere. And that's, I would say, most people. People will identify with a sports team, a political party, I mentioned profession, or whatever their job is. People identify as that. And then people start to convince themselves that's who they are. So you're not going to waste time right off the top. And it doesn't take hours to figure this out. Like, once you get used to it, it would take less than a minute, maybe 2 minutes, if you really want to try to see how brainwashed they are with this identity that they've created. And then on the flip side, if you're actually having a discussion or debate about an actual cause and there's no identity attached to it, then you can say, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. You can have a more productive conversation, and you can plan your strategies accordingly. But really, for the most part, again, whether you're talking to someone face to face or online through chat or something, recognize these patterns, see what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with. And the best thing to do is just say, okay, and let it go. And let them rant on and not even pay attention. When I give people the last word, say I come across this myself, and I will say, okay, feel free to have the last word. I don't go check to see or read or listen to their last word, because I don't care at that point. And usually you can see, for example, if there's notifications, that there's more and more notifications because they're trying to keep this thing going, and the best thing to do is not waste your time. Now, for some of these people, when you do that, they think, success, I won, whatever, the conversation or debate in their minds. Meanwhile, you're thinking, I was just having a conversation, asking some questions. Perhaps even to see if what they're saying will entice you to further look into whatever their position is. And most times there's not. But they think it's a win. So you know something? Who cares? It really doesn't matter. You have to ask yourself, is it worth it having these conversations with people that you're never going to get through? They have to break this on their own. And they have to be willing to. Until they are, you're not even going to plant the seed. Anyway, hopefully this gives you some things to think about and save you a lot of time. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Okay? Christianity, again, is not by Jesus. It's not a religion by Jesus. It's a religion about Jesus. And there's a difference.
Run. Run your ass off. Look, I'm not trying to spook you. I just want to help. And I'm not going to bullshit you. See, this is the real world. And the real world ain't about heroes and miracles. This world's about one thing. Survival. 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 That's all there is. This small piece of dialogue changes a major plot point completely.
Just remember, I was one man against many. Fighting a losing battle, but I still fought to the end.
That means press on. That means endure. That means God cannot fail, and you're not going to give up. That's not an option for a child of God. This means you are going to be delivered. Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.